Yeah, your reputation is everything. If you acquire some sort of bad reputation because you don't cut people in on the deal or you screw people in other ways, people are not going to want to work with you ever again. You know, at the end of the day, it's a group of humans. It's a group of individuals, and I'm running that. And if people are acting in ways that upsets other people, I have to step in.
Obviously, you've come from a very non-traditional route. Do you have any advice for others who are maybe 23, 24, 25?
No 2 days are the same in the family office world.
So if I was to put diving with sharks, like,
Well,
like, this is the risk appetite, where are you in the spectrum from?
Just living with cannibals for most of 2013 would be pretty high on that list, I would say, and the many things that entailed. Yeah.
What did you eat?
Sweeps podcast with me, your host, Rory Mason. Opposite me today, we have the man who switched swimwear modelling for modelling on Excel. That's right, he's the love child of Leighton Hewitt and Timothy Chalamet. Josh, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for asking this episode.
Of course.
I know we've had a few issues before. Well, it's good to have you. It's been a change of venue, but I'm glad we're all set up, ready to go. And obviously, we've got a friend of yours coming on the podcast today.
Yes, the man to my left, the myth, the legend,
Sam.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. It's good to have you here. I've got a bit of a background, but from what we know, at least from what Josh has told us, so you're a fund manager at London-based family office, and before that took a fairly non-traditional route into finance. So you're a writer for Time Magazine, number of publications before that as well. You worked in political risk, both on the government side and then the private sector, which sort of led you to the family office space, and nowadays you're doing early stage investing mostly. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, all accurate.
Good.
We can go into the weeds if you want.
Yeah,
that's the big picture.
I mean, absolutely. It'd be a pretty sort of fascinating story to get dug into. Before we do, though, should we just give, for those that aren't familiar, maybe like a 30-second summary of what a family office is and what it does? Do you two want to tackle that?
Sure. I guess I can give the high level and you can...
Sure. Sounds good.
So essentially, if someone has around 100 million, that's kind of what a family office starts at, 100 million upwards. And then instead of investing that money through various different ways or through agencies or companies, banks, they will employ a team and then deploy that capital in many different ways. But it's their money that they manage individually. So, yeah, I guess that's...
Yeah, spot on. Yeah. I agree.
And worth mentioning, I suppose, as well, that obviously you get the deal side, but you know they might have like an in-house lawyer, accountant. It's basically everything you would need to keep a sort of multi-100 million pound sort of family empire going, right?
Yeah. It's usually 2 investment people, individuals, and then 1 accountant, CFO, COO, crossover, and then a general counsel.
Yeah. I mean, we can get into it later, but I've found there's no usually in the family office world, but that's a nice blueprint. Yeah, they come in so many different shapes and sizes. But yeah, high level, I think that's pretty accurate.
Okay, that's great. I think that's useful context to get everyone up to speed. But Sam, let's sort of jump into your background and perhaps take us back to 2009, where I think you were a Japanese translator.
Yeah. Among other things, I 2008, 2009, I ended up in Japan. That was mostly born out of my desire to not have some sort of conventional career path and go as far away as I possibly could from everything. And Japan was pretty far away, so ended up there. I got quite embroiled in sort of martial arts circles and other things, and I actually wanted to be a kickboxer professionally in those days. That was the vision when I was about 20. But it turns out it's quite hard job and not very lucrative. I found out the hard way.
And painful.
Really painful. Yeah, I dislocated my shoulder and thought, okay, this has been fun. And I met a lot of very interesting, unusual people out in Tokyo and Kyoto. But then decided to not do that. And I moved to Paris. I'm getting the years confused, but anyway, after Japan. And that's where I became I was initially, a translator. So I was working in English, French, and Japanese, working for a variety of luxury brands, L'Oreal, Chanel. Incredibly boring. I was basically translating technical documents and mystery shopping reviews and all kinds of stuff. But, kept the old brain going a little bit. And it was while I was in Paris that I got into writing. So yeah, I became a journalist working for Time Magazine and Huffington Post, among other publications. Bunch of very, very niche publications like trying to remember, there was like a Somaliland Sun or something, some weird Northeast African publication. A few other a few African companies were hiring me to write features, and I was just thinking, well, yeah, whatever, yeah, let's do it.
And did you? Sorry to interrupt, but did you have like formal qualifications for all this, or just picked up the languages, picked up writing, like self-taught, and got into these jobs that way?
Yeah, formal qualifications has never really been my way of doing anything. So I have a few, but no, certainly with those writing gigs, I just met the right people and I could string a sentence together. And so I just would write a few features and basically follow commission sort of jobs, get paid for it, and then write more stuff. I was actually a features writer at a publication in Paris that I've forgotten the name of because we're going back a little bit. But yeah, I was there for a number of years. And again, that was all part of that mindset of the time of trying to have as many interesting experiences as possible, avoid a traditional career path, have adventures, and basically learn skills. I had this idea that in my 20s, I wanted to just acquire as much experience as possible and not really think about a real job until I got to the age of about 30. That was a kind of blueprint that I had in my mind based off a conversation I had when I was about 18, 19 with a guy from the Foreign Office who said, your 20s are just about experiencing new things, just about acquiring skills, meeting new people, traveling to faraway places. And then when you get to 30, maybe then you should start thinking about getting a job. So that was my Paris chapter, which was a number of years. And then it got really interesting after that.
Okay. That's fascinating. I sort of wish I knew that when I was 20.
Well, you followed the more straight out of uni.
I just,
big bank.
You just played it safe on the just the traditional route, which it's been quite fun. Like I've had my own ups and downs, but I haven't certainly been to Paris and Japan and all these places. It's very exciting. And my sort of follow-on question from this, which I'm assuming the answer is going to be perhaps no, but the move into family offices, it was basically, was this like a really targeted move, or is this something following that experience that you sort of fell into again?
Yeah, no, it was even more kind of random and non-planned than that, because I basically after Paris ended up in Papua New Guinea, the other end of the world. And under kind of unusual circumstances that we can probably talk about maybe offline.
Okay.
I ended up living with a tribe, a kind of Stone Age tribe in the Eastern Highlands of Papua New Guinea for most of 2013. We're going back 11 years. Yeah. I spent most of that year sort of isolated from the rest of the world, making fires, learning to hunt with a bow, cutting firewood, cooking sweet potato, and not thinking about family offices or finance or any kind of normal career path at all. But then when I came back to London, that was 2014, 15, around that sort of time, some of the work I'd been doing in Papua New Guinea was directly applicable to the private sector. And so I ended up working for a bank in, not so much the hunting with bows and other things, but some other stuff I got up to. I was able to apply in a sort of private intelligence role at a bank in Mayfair. And so that, we can get into it, but that was then the start of my, let's say, normal career path that led into the family office space, ultimately.
Okay, I mean, we are a finance podcast, but obviously we're going to have to ask for
Sure.
a story or an experience. How did you come about living with a Stone Age tribe in Papua New Guinea?
Yeah. It's a long old story that I'm a bit nervous to say too much about online. It was a fascinating experience, and and it's an unusual place, Papua New Guinea. I mean, I ended up living with this tribe where there were cannibals. I was probably the first British person to go to this particular area in history. I'm almost sure of that. And it was a very, very primitive tribe in many ways. They didn't have the wheel. There's a lot of basic technology. I mean, let alone running water.
So you were God.
Well, it was complex because not really. I mean, I didn't know how to hunt pigs with arrows when I arrived, and I didn't know how to fish and make fences out of bits of wood and protect myself against snakes and all the stuff that actually makes you God in that environment.
And how long were you there for?
The best part of 2013, 8 months or something.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So what was it like coming back, especially going into like private intelligence, which I'd imagine is fairly switched on?
Yeah, it was tough. It was quite tough because I'd spent most of that year running around the jungle shooting arrows at things, and then I'm sat behind a desk doing due
Sandra's
diligence
getting a
tasks.
coffee.
I mean, I was tempted. I was really tempted. Don't think I didn't think about putting arrows in a few people in that office, but I managed to resist the urge. And I mean, going to live in the jungle is pretty tough, and then coming back to the urban jungle is also not super easy. So yeah, I mean, the transition back to normal life was not something that I particularly enjoyed.
Could you do it again?
It's a young man's game. I'm old now.
Okay.
But at 25, yeah, just about. Just about.
Going from the tribe to the private intelligence firm, can you talk about what you did there, or should we sort of move to what happened after that?
No. That's okay. Yeah. I mean, so I ended up. It was a bank, really. It was a bank with a number of different wings to the bank. And initially, I was doing a lot of political risk monitoring. So I was looking at. I mean, I was looking at the Pacific, where I just spent some time, and also in sub-Saharan Africa, and I was assessing various countries for their KRE risk, which is kidnap, for ransom, and extortion, terrorism risk, all the fun, sexy stuff, and that was my initial role at that organization. But I kind of transitioned into a more business intelligence role at one point, which meant I was doing due diligence on individuals and companies, particularly if they seemed a little bit shady, trying to work out what they got up to. And that was my first foray into private client work, because this particular organization was doing things like guarding gold mines in South Africa and other places, and also arranging birthday parties for oligarchs' children in London. It was a kind of all-encompassing organization. And of course, that second piece touched on family office world. And that was probably my first taste of the land of family offices, and how I eventually kind of got into it.
Okay. And in all the broad encompassing experiences you did and skills you acquired, which ones were the most valuable in either getting you to family offices or keeping you in them?
Yeah, great question. I think I mean, so there's just one step in between me working for a family office and that bank, which that I went to work for Euromoney Institutional Investor, the media conglomerate, in a JV with a Californian fintech company.
Right.
And it was there that I will get to your question, don't worry. But it was there that we built a large network. We tried to build a digital side to their business, essentially, where we built a large network of investors on an online platform, from sovereign wealth funds all the way down to the family offices and everything in between. But you see, the family offices were by far the most fun. And my kind of colourful backstory sort of chimed quite well with some of the individuals in that community, who were sort of maybe not the most traditional finance type people, who didn't really care about internships and grad schemes and any of that sort of stuff. Life experience was by far the most interesting talking point among those individuals. And I think, my experiences out in the jungle and other places gave me a kind of agility and flexibility of mind, and you need that if you're going to work for a family office. If you have that sort of 9-to-5 mindset that you can employ easily at a corporate, it's not really going to work with a lot of family offices, where you have to have a very flexible, mindset and decent relationship with the principal, where it's a Saturday but you have to do something, or you're called late at night because there's an emergency, and you just have to think on the fly and be able to improvise.
Okay.
Has it changed, do you think, from when you started and seeing where it's at now and where it's going?
As working for
like more the selection process, how you said world experience was very much appreciated, hence your background. And then would you say it's still the same today, or it's become a little bit more technical, a little bit more institutional, or?
It's definitely become more technical. I wouldn't say it's become more institutional. I think the ability to think on the fly and be very agile is going to be a skill that you're always going to need at every level of working for a family office, because you're essentially, answering to the principal, whoever that person is. And if the principal wants you to do something, you kind of got to do it. So I think you, at whatever level in the family office structure you're at, you still need to be able to improvise and think quickly and slightly think outside the box and not panic under pressure, and all those skills that I like to think I acquired to some level in my 20s.
You're now in this family office, mostly on the deal side. You've had all this massive life experience and skills and everything go on. What is a day-to-day job now? What are you focusing on? What are you doing?
Sure. Yeah, so I now work for a British family office with an AUM of a little bit north of $1 billion. And I'm kind of setting up what I'm ultimately going to be doing, but that's going to be early stage investing, focusing on directs, but looking at funds as well because of the co-invest, and yeah, maybe building some companies as well.
Okay. And have you along the way, have you had to sort of like acquire more traditional modeling skills to complement like your soft skills, or have you sort of got those already from prior experiences?
To some extent, I had to develop those skills. I mean, so I before my current job, I was working for another family office for 5 years. So I was working for a German tech entrepreneur based in Hamburg. I was sort of the London wing of that family office for most of that time. And so I was working closely on the portfolio companies. I was also acting more in a kind of traditional family office capacity of looking at LP tickets into funds. And I also helped him build a couple of companies and actually build a fund as well. So through all of that experience, I got to learn some of the technical side of investing and financial markets that I hadn't necessarily acquired in my 20s, let's say.
Okay. And have you found like a passion for one thing over the other? Is it the building or the investing that you prefer?
So my passion is people, I would say, and we can get to the family office network that I built at some point later in the conversation. But I think, I've tried to leverage my relationships for everything I've done. So right now I'm leveraging them to get interesting deal flow. In the past, I was leveraging those relationships to try to raise for our projects that we were building internally in my previous job. But I had always a kind of people-focused approach to everything. I'm not sure if that answered the question. Maybe it didn't.
No, it does. It's like you say, it's something I wanted to come on to later, which is you have this really interesting sort of, I'd call it side of desk, but I suppose what you're saying is it's directly related to your job, which is the family office network you manage. And like you say, also if it gives you deal flow, if it gives you all these things, that is actually part of your job, I suppose, is maintaining that network.
Yeah, I mean, it was never part of any job description I ever had, but it became a thing. It became a real asset that I can leverage in any number of ways. And yeah, I mean, we can talk about how that came about later on, but it's a tool that I rely on every day of the week.
Well, why don't we get into it now? Because it is one of like the really impressive things that you've done, which is build this massive network within the family office space. Do you want to tell us about what it is and sort of how it came about?
When I was at the family office, I was introduced to Hemel at White Star. Not introduced, I knew Hemel, but he then told me about your network with Paul Winter, who's worked. I don't actually know how that started between you two. So get onto that. But I heard if you work in the family office world, you need to be involved with the social group because Sam and Paul have developed this incredible group, like social group, deal flow group. I mean, how many other subsectors of the chat have you got? A lot. But and then I came to one of the events and I was just blown away. It's really high quality network that you've got there, and everyone's quite tight as well. So I'll leave you to pick that up. It's been great being a part of it.
Oh, well, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Sorry, just to follow up. So that's how you first met Sam, was someone said, if you want to go in this space, you have to get yourself involved in what's going on over here.
Sam's like the Ken of family office. So if you work in family office, you want to know Sam or Paul, because you guys really do know everyone, and you've got your ear to the ground with London family office networks, even kind of the global family office conversations as well. So yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the genesis of this group was that so as I mentioned, I was working for this German family for 5 years, and I was basically the London wing of that family office. So I towards the end, I had a couple of colleagues when we started building other businesses, but for most of that time, I was just me by myself in London, getting lonely. And so I thought, okay, I need to make some friends, basically. And also we were looking at doing co-investments with other family offices. We were looking at deploying into other family offices' portfolio companies, raising into our portfolio companies. We went on to anchor a venture fund, and we had to raise for that. And so meeting other family offices was absolutely essential. And so what I did was I started going to a bunch of family office conferences in Mayfair and Switzerland and other places, and I found them incredibly boring. You suit and tie in a hotel theatre somewhere, panel discussions that go on forever. And then you occasionally get a little respite. You get out to have a coffee and a biscuit somewhere, and you start having some interesting conversations, and it's great. And then someone rings a bell and says, "Stop having fun. You've got to go back into the conference room and listen to more panel discussions." I thought, there's got to be a better way of doing this, because I'm having some interesting conversations, meeting some fascinating people. And so I just started saying, should we just go get a drink? Should we, like, this conference is great, and if you're interested in the particular theme of the conference, that's fantastic. But should we just go get a drink? Because you're pretty interesting, and you're pretty interesting. And it turned out there was huge appetite for that.
Yep.
So we started. So initially there was probably a very small group of us, of which, and Paul was one of them, and we just went to get a pint, and we had a chat, and it was great. And we were 5 or so, and we thought, we've got to do this again. We really have solved a lot of problems and discussed a lot of interesting things. So let's do it again. So we did. We went for another drink a couple of weeks later, and everyone brought a few more people. So then we were 10, and it evolved very organically. We're now at about 430 in that group, and that's the family office socials group.
Yep.
And then as you mentioned, we've got now a number of spin-outs. So a deals group and a funds group, which I can talk about. An insights group where people share ideas and white papers and articles and research, and then a solutions group, which is kind of anything to do with the stuff that we mentioned earlier, anything family office related that's not to do with investment. Where can we hire a chef for the principal's birthday at the weekend? Where can I park my super yacht in wherever, Monaco? How can we find a lawyer who's going to help us with this particular problem? And the crucial thing about this whole network is it's peer-to-peer. So there's no service providers in there. There's no one trying to sell you anything. This is family offices asking the advice of other family offices. And so where do I find a great notary in Switzerland? If someone will probably say, well, we use this guy and he's great, and recommend them. And that's the whole idea, is that it's purely peer-to-peer. And then yes, we've launched a couple of other spin-outs as well, social spin-outs. So one in Switzerland and one in Hong Kong. And I have big ideas about where to take all of this. But that's the state of play at the moment.
And is it run through a LinkedIn page, emails, WhatsApp group?
WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
WhatsApp group. And the reason behind that is that, a lot of people have said, you should put in sort of create a tech platform, or you should modernize it and have this and have that. The issue I've had with some tech platforms in the past is adoption. You can get a cool looking app or a whatever, go online and it looks brilliant, and you log in and it looks fantastic, loads of great deals, everything. But it's the logging in part that people struggle with. Trying to get people to actually get onto these platforms is so hard. But everyone's on WhatsApp. Everyone's on WhatsApp all the time. And if I put a message on WhatsApp saying, hey, we're going to do some more drinks next Thursday, 430 people know about it immediately.
It really is the talk of the town. When you put one on, my boss and everyone else in the family after we'll text each other, hey, are you going to the drinks tonight? Everyone kind of knows what's going on. It's pretty impressive. Maybe you might get invited.
Let's see. Play your cards right.
A small-time private banker could only dream of mixing it with a big fish like that. And so these events that you put on the socials, do you just go to a pub, or do you book out a venue? Do you have a sponsor? How does it work?
So in the olden days, we would rock up to a pub when it was 5 of us. But now we're typically getting about 100 people turning up to these things. And so, if you go to the Footman with 100 people on a Thursday and try and get served, it's not going to happen. So for the last 2 years or so, we've had to get private venues because that way we guarantee that we can get a private space, and there's a bit of quality control. There's a little bit of quality control. Not much. I never have bouncers or guest lists or anything like that. And of course, random people do rock up, but that's fine. That's okay. So then we have these big events every 6 weeks or so. I try to rotate them into different venues across central London, and we'll do another one in June probably. Summer special.
Awesome. That's very interesting, and it's obviously about how we came about, Josh. But it's interesting that we've obviously coalesced on the same idea as you, perhaps just a few years later, which is it's very similar. Like, everyone is really VP, maybe plus or minus one. There might be associate, might be director, but you're at a stage where you're kicking on. Your role is slightly changing, so you're expected to go from maybe just grunt work to more deal side, more networking. And we were going to these events like anyone else, and we're like, this is quite stiff and stale. Yeah. And we're all 28, we're all ambitious, we're all doing the same thing.
Let's have some fun while we do it. I
bet if you put 4 of us in a room together, we would have way more fun than if we were here. And then that's kind of what happened. Just basically 5 of us grabbed a beer in Canary Wharf after work one day, and we're like, this is way better than meeting at the name bank XYZ conference.
Totally.
So it snowballed. So it's interesting that like that is a repeated theme, perhaps amongst all different institutions and levels, that actually is a bit of disruption in the networking space.
100%. Yeah, totally. I mean, I was just thinking about myself and what I like to do. And I like to go in a casual environment and chat to like-minded people. I don't like to put on a suit and tie and go to some dry investment conference for 3 days somewhere. You know, I mean, I will do it. I have done it. I will continue to do it because you still meet interesting people. And sometimes the conferences are very high quality and there's an educational piece. But basically, you know, through this network now that I've built, there isn't really anything that I can't ask the community where I, you know, won't get a decent answer. So if I want to know about Munich commercial real estate, or if I want to know about Series B fintech deals in the Netherlands, or, you know, if you name it, I could probably just ask the community and get a pretty decent response.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And so that way I don't need to look up, when are the Dutch fintech conferences, and try and learn about them in that way.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, the deal flow group.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have 3 fintech deals on at the minute. And just wanted to see if anyone looks at that space. That's why I requested if you could add me to it. Sent a message. I got like 8 DMs in a couple minutes. So people are looking for that deal flow, but also people are trying to share it as well. So it's impressive.
Great. Yeah. Delighted to hear that.
Out of interest, how have you managed going past sort of, do you say about 400, 450?
430 at the moment, I think. Yeah.
Okay. How have you managed going past? Do you know the concept of Dunbar's number?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
How have you managed breaking that barrier and also perhaps the actors that are there to take rather than give back to the community?
Yeah. It's very, very difficult. You know, question. Yeah, very good question. And you're right. I mean, is it Dunbar's number 100 or something?
It's about 150, I think.
Yeah, so I'm well beyond that. I try my absolute hardest to get to know every single person in the group. It's not completely possible. Particularly there are people in Hong Kong and the US and other places. But I try my absolute hardest at least to reach out to all those people so that they know that I'm there if they want to talk. I also personally try to onboard everyone. So yeah, my friend Paul set it up with me. He occasionally adds people to the group, but the majority of people these days who get added are by me. And the reason I do that, rather than just share the links and let them spread around and, you know, whatever, is if I'm gatekeeper, I can get to understand who these people are, and I can understand if they're legitimate family offices, service providers, you know, sell side with a fund that they're just trying to flog, you know. So that's one piece of it. But then the other is that, you know, if they get to know me too, then there's a trust piece. And so they can then come to me and say, hey, Sam, do you know any other family offices looking at biotech? And I can say, yeah, you should talk to these guys. So yes, will all 430 of those people become my best friends? Very unlikely. But do I have very, very good friends in that community? Yes. I've been to many of their weddings. You know, I know a lot of these people very, very well. And those I don't, I would love to get to know better.
You know, in some sense, the answer to the Dunbar's question is just a lot of work, like creating,
you name it.
Reaching out and managing that almost individually. You know, I know like these personal relationships can be quite self-sustaining, because if you meet someone you like them, you go to their wedding, that's obviously someone you want to hang around with. But that's a lot of people to keep in contact with and really manage and like you say, also to put yourself out there as well too.
But yeah, I think a topic I like to discuss on every podcast, which is the power of the network, right? And I would like for you to touch upon how this group and your network has helped you out and played such a pivotal role to get you to where you are today.
Yeah, well, I made the decision a number of years ago that rather than trying to know everything, I should try to know everyone. And then I'm not far away from knowing everything by proxy. And so, you know, to my point earlier, where if there's something I need, I mean, it could be anything. You know, if I need some slippers this evening made from a certain material, I can ask the community, and I may well be able to get them. And so, you know, taking that forward into a kind of more professional context, I think that, knowing as many people as you possibly can in the right positions is just so invaluable. And a concrete example, in my previous job, I was working on one of our tech portfolio companies that was going to go public in Germany. And we were running a pre-IPO round where they were looking to do an acquisition of another company. And we quite quickly had to raise quite a lot of money. And we didn't want to go the traditional routes for various reasons. We didn't want to publicize this too much. But I knew someone for whom it was perfect, an absolute perfect fit because of this community. And I reached out to him directly. I said, hey man, we've got this great deal. I think it's exactly the sort of thing that you're interested in. It was. He invested. They did the acquisition. We went public with that
Fantastic.
company.
Wow.
So that's a concrete example of how this community has helped me. Yeah.
So for me, I like to give back through tennis, right? How do you like to give back to the people who have helped you?
I mean, I like to think that this community gives a lot back because it's free. So, I've not tried to put in any kind of membership model here. I actually don't do sponsorship or anything. It's completely on the house. And where I can, if someone else comes to me with a pretty bespoke, do you know anyone who does X, Y, Z? The answer is almost certainly yes. I can probably point you in the right direction. But if the answer is no, I would recommend they post it in the appropriate subgroup.
Okay.
And they'll almost certainly get some kind of response.
Yeah.
And I meet people all the time who say that they have so many conversations off the back of this community that I don't even see. So of course, I'm always happy to help my friends in any other way. But I think the power of that network is a tool that I can leverage in any direction.
Sam, some practical advice though for managing a network, because Russell Tucker and I gave a speech the other day at Holt Business School. One of the points was, look, if you're looking to get hired post MBA, get networking, and it'll increase your chance of getting hired, because you never know, someone might be, just hiring that time, they haven't put it online yet, and it boosts your chances if you can go through an employee. But what does maintaining a professional network actually look like? Is it liking and commenting posts on LinkedIn? Is it calling them once a week? Is it just reaching out once every 6 months? How do you go about maintaining these relationships?
It's very difficult. And there's no one way fits all with this problem, I would say. One of the things I've tried to do a lot is bond with people on a non-professional level. So, you mentioned tennis. I think that's a great example. If there's a sport or some sort of interest that you share with someone, focus on that. I also try my absolute hardest to understand people's stories on a personal level, where they've come from. So rather than, you work for this family office and you only do fixed income, and yeah, good to know. But where are you from? Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have kids? Where do you live? And try to understand people's human side, because people really, really, really appreciate that. And of course, you can always talk about work and business stuff later, but trying to bond with people on a more basic level is something that I've put a lot of effort into over the years. And I think that's why the network has a very kind of human feel to it. And hence WhatsApp is the perfect vehicle, because it's not some sort of anonymous tech platform where, no, it's WhatsApp. And we go for drinks. And all of that is what you do with your friends. And so I've tried to not simulate, sounds like it's fake, but I've tried to emulate what I would do with my normal non-work friends, which is text them on WhatsApp, what are you doing tonight? Let's go for a drink. So that's what I've tried to do, add the personal touch to everything.
Obviously, you've got this fantastic network. It's going from strength to strength. Do you have any practical examples you can touch on, either professional, maybe people raised 100 million, or personal, you said about weddings, did anyone meet their wife through the network? Any really good stories there?
Sure, yeah, both. So on the professional side, I get people often telling me that they've co-invested with people they've met through the network. Teamed up on deals. People have invested in a fund that they've recommended and brought other people into the fund, or a family office built a company or invested in a company early stage. They're now doing their Series A, and another family that they've met through the network has invested. So there's all kinds of success stories like that, which is great. And I've not monetized any of that, which is, you're welcome, everyone. But on the personal side, yeah, I've been to 2 weddings from that group. And unfortunately, I can't say there's been any romantic matchmaking within the group, I don't think. But at the last wedding I went to, there were about 4 or 5. Yeah, let's see. 4 or 5.
Josh's eyes just lit up.
Well, let's see what we can do.
I'm a taken man.
Okay, all right, good to know.
sure.
I mean, family office dating could be another group we spin out at some point. But this wedding I went to, there was about 4 or 5 members of my group that attended my friend's wedding, having all met through FOS, my family office group. So yeah, some serious friendships and some decent deals have been done.
What is the future of the family office network? What comes next?
World domination is never too far from the top of my mind. And so, we've...
And it's all going to be for free still.
Well, yeah.
Open source it to the fans.
The idea at the moment is that we scale the central London group. And by scale, I don't mean I do anything really. It's all inbound now, which is great. I get people every day of the week messaging me saying, "Oh, hey, my friend John just set up a new family office. He'd love to join your group." And I then gently vet them and then let them in. So Family Office Socials, FOS, the mothership, is growing quite organically. created a Hong Kong spin out and a Swiss spin out because there were communities forming in those places. The US and the UAE seem like obvious next places to expand into. But the idea is never to monetize the network, at least not from a family office paying perspective. So I'm not going to create any kind of membership model. I'm not going to dilute the network with service providers or sell side. However, if I can make myself useful within that network, then if someone wants to pay me off the back of it, that's absolutely fine. You're more than welcome. But I think the more interesting way of monetizing it is that I'm looking for interesting deals. I'm looking for interesting funds, interesting investment opportunities. And rather than going the traditional consulting route or trying to do my own research, which I obviously will have to do as well, the deal flow I can get from this community will be absolutely top notch. Yeah. And so I think that's where the real money lies, is getting access to great opportunities on the deals and the fund side that I can deploy into and ultimately, make a lot of money. That's the plan.
It's interesting because Ken says the same, which is how you're going to get yourself on the cap table. And I was speaking to a guy earlier who works at a VC firm, but actually within crypto. And he said the same thing, which is like, it's such a fast moving space that you have to really fight to get into the most interesting projects, because you also got the power law, all these things that mean like you don't want to be the fifth best capital allocator because you won't get the returns. So I suppose if you can do all this for free, attract this wonderful network, then naturally the sort of best way to monetize it, and it seems the way that most aligns with your ethos, which is you're just as interested in sort of giving back as taking, is just have people be like, hey, there's room on this cap table, we really like you, thanks for all you do.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, and indeed I can use it in a more proactive way. If I take some sort of macro view, like I think bonds in Germany are going to be amazing, or whatever, or any kind of opportunity where I have a view, I can go to the community and say, hey, who's got anything interesting in this space? I'm interested in Series B fintech deals. Anyone help me? And probably someone can, and probably say, yeah, well, it's funny you should say that. That's an area we specialize in. Have you seen these deals? And I've used it for that purpose before. But as the community gets bigger and better and more powerful and more global, the sky's the limit, really.
Yeah. That's actually a good point. I suppose any thematic idea you have is almost pre-screened. So you don't need to do a lot of the grunt work, because you've got 450 family offices that say, here are our top 4 ideas in the B2B SaaS space, and you can just pick the one you like.
Correct. Exactly right. Yeah. And that's actually really what I'm planning to use for my role currently, which is allocating to early stage companies, is to leverage the relationships I've got of real experts who've been doing this for years and mostly have become very successful. Because what is a family office? You've either inherited loads of money, or often you've made a lot of money through expertise and hard work. So why not leverage my relationships with those people?
Obviously, you've come from a very non-traditional route. Do you have any advice for others who are maybe 23, 24, 25, realize they haven't gone down a traditional path, but are still looking to get in this space?
Yeah, so I would say for me, my 20s was really about skill acquisition and experiences that were not necessarily related to a concrete idea of my ultimate career. Now, a lot of people will give opposite advice, and you need to build something cumulative that's very linear. You want to become an accountant, you do these training courses, you go to this firm,
it's so conflicting.
Yeah,
it's really conflicting.
And of course, that works very well for a lot of people. But if you are not like that, and I was never like that, the idea of doing the obvious route was anathema to my DNA. So instead, what I did was try to pick up skills along the way that I thought would be applicable, even soft skills that would be applicable later on, whatever I ended up wanting to do. And it all came back to that blueprint I mentioned at the start of the conversation about this conversation I had with this guy from the Foreign Office who said, your 20s is about experience. Your 20s is about going away, living in other cultures, learning languages, learning unusual skills. And then when you get to 30, see how you can apply all of that in a kind of professional sense. And so that's what I focused on doing. And of course, part of that is you meet all kinds of interesting, weird and wonderful characters along the way. And so start building your network, start fostering relationships with interesting people who can help you, even in unconventional and unobvious kind of ways. But that's what I focused on. And so the end result is this FOS network, which I'm really proud of.
It's funny, touching upon that, I played tennis this weekend with a guy who's got his own wealth management firm. And we met through kind of the investor networks. And so when I initially tried to get time with him, he's very busy. And then I asked him the question, I said, do you play tennis? And he said, yes, I do. And then I told him my background. He said, oh, well, I would love to play. Anyway, we spent 6 hours together on Saturday. we played tennis for like 2 hours. We went to Woodcote Park down, the RAC club there. And just the advice that I got from this guy, what I learned, him also opening up his black book for me also sharing some of my network through the tennis world. And it's just been great. I think, the power of the social skills,
Definitely.
finding something in common with someone. And really reaping the benefit, like both of you,
100% connecting on that human level about something not necessarily work related.
It's just,
and see where it goes.
it's so invaluable. It really is.
Agree. Yeah. And with that in mind, don't screw people. I can't emphasize that enough. I've seen people make a quick buck by kind of betraying someone or not giving them carry when they promised.
Always comes back around.
It always comes back around because you get a reputation for having done that, and then you're kind of out. You're kind of out of the community. People know that you're not someone to be trusted, and then you're really going to struggle. So, it sounds very...
I think that's something to mention, like reputation in family offices.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, your reputation is everything. If you acquire some sort of bad reputation because you don't, cut people in on the deal or you screw people in other ways, people are not going to want to work with you ever again.
And they talk.
And they talk. It's a very gossipy little group, It's extraordinary how much gossip flies around inside the community, and so trying to keep tabs on that is also quite tricky. I've become HR manager, police officer, you name it, to this community because there's every day of the week someone messages me with some extremely strong opinion, normally about another person in the community, and I have to say it's okay, calm down, we're all fine, we're all adults, and sort of be headmaster often, which I don't think you'd necessarily get in quite the same way in some sort of like institutional investor community, but I could be wrong. Maybe it's just human nature.
It's quite interesting actually because you've really poked your head above the parapet, and it burnt the boats in some sense that you're living and dying by this network, and obviously it's going fantastic. But you must feel some pressure that if things start going wrong or if there's a falling out in the group, that it might affect your personal reputation.
Oh yeah, and we've had problems over the years with people doing things that other people didn't like and misbehaving, and we've thrown people out in the past. We've thrown people out also. We've thrown people out for being not legit in some way, so behaving in a way that's not professionally in line with the ethos of the group.
I've only seen that once.
Yeah, we had a version of that recently. But we've also thrown people out for kind of personal reasons in the past, where they've acted just appallingly on a personal level. Could be a very legit family office who's doing good deals and all the rest of it. But, at the end of the day, it's a group of humans. It's a group of individuals, and I'm running that. And if people are acting in ways that upsets other people, I have to step in. I have to say, look, we can't, don't do that again. Oh, you've done it again. Sorry, we've got to call it a day. So yeah, it's tricky. It's not easy. And because I haven't set up rules, bear in mind, this is Sam's WhatsApp group. This is Sam's family office community. This is not a concrete society where we have a charter and you have to follow these rules and sign at the bottom and nothing like that. It's, do you want to be part of FOS, which is Family Office Socials / Friends of Sam? So it's,
I didn't know that.
Well, that was suggested by one of the FOS members the other day. I thought, yeah, I quite like that. Let's roll with it. But that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge, is that it is a casual network. So I try not to be too heavy-handed in terms of being a disciplinarian, but sometimes people just push it. And if you push it too hard, you're out for the sake of the rest of the people in there. So tricky one.
I just had a question for you. I mean, you're very ingrained in the UK family office networks. Where do you see family offices going, and what are some exciting trends that you're seeing? I think would be good to get your take on.
So the problem with family offices is they come in so many radically different shapes and sizes that it's always a challenge to look at trends. We've all been to these family office events where you look at a stage and there's the Duke of wherever, who's 5th generation, who owns half of wherever, Belgravia. And next to him is some guy in a Metallica t-shirt who's made the same amount of money in crypto. And they've got nothing in common. They don't like each other, but their assets under management are the same.
Okay.
And so with that in mind, every family office follows the whim and personality of the principal. My ex-boss was very interested in longevity and living for a long time. So we did a lot of stuff in biotech and neurotech and these kind of areas. Another principal might be very interested in, you name it, infrastructure projects in sub-Saharan Africa or commodities in Kazakhstan, or it could be anything. And often it can relate to the source of wealth, but often it doesn't. As I said, my ex-boss was a consumer internet entrepreneur before he got interested in biotech and biohacking and longevity and these kind of areas. And so with that in mind, it's so difficult to look at trends in the family office space, almost impossible. Yes, you can think it's been a good or a bad year for venture, or PE is really in vogue, or these kind of asset class specific trends. But what are family offices in general doing? Always very hard to say. And of course, within the family office world, you get single family offices, you get multi-family offices, you get multi-billion AUM family offices. You get a guy who's in his mum's basement who's got 100 million somehow, but is not the same level of sophistication as without name dropping, the big old school families that we all know well.
Yeah.
And that's, you see, therein lies the color, and what makes it so interesting is that unlike a bunch of pension fund managers who are mostly all sort of the same, and they're all doing index tracking or all the usual sort of stuff, in the family office world, every conversation is radically different. Oh, this guy sold his consumer internet business. This person made all of his money with restaurants in Georgia.
Yeah.
It could just be any number of sources of wealth.
Sure.
One of the things I always say I really like about my job is I've now got a book of 40 clients. So in each economic cycle, 8-10 years market cycle, I feel like I see it 40 times because I see each client's individual reaction to it. Do they sort of crowd, like herd together? Do they have like loss aversion? Do they get euphoric at the tops and bearish at the bottoms? Are they calling me about crypto when it gets to 80,000 and trying to get me to sell it at 10,000? Or conversely, like the opposite, right? And you always get some who are like just insanely shrewd and just seemingly bottom tick every single sort of correction. You're like, how on earth is he doing it? But like you get everyone in the middle. Do you see this I know it's institutional, so you'd expect a bit more behavioral control and like rigor and investment councils, but do you see that same like herding in terms of like, it's 2021, everyone in AI, or now everyone in crypto, or are you, like you say, are you still really diverse and everyone does their own thing?
There are different risk appetites, of course, within the family office world. Some people have built the empire, and the job then is to just maintain the empire, and so they'll do very risk-off, conservative sort of investments. But I mean, particularly the family offices that look at VC, often they want to be the hero. They want to have some mad story to tell. I was the guy that backed this, that 1000x or whatever. And so, ego is a very powerful force in the family office world. Very powerful. And so with that in mind, it comes in so many different shapes and sizes that herding, it exists. And as you said, I mean, if there's a top tier fund that's raising, of course, everyone wants to get into it. Or if there's a deal that's just so hot that you'd be a fool to miss out, everyone tries to pile in. But, people's interests and risk appetites and asset class of choice are so diverse that actually trying to find a trend is often very difficult.
It's kind of a similar question, but have you noticed that, and I won't ask you to name them, there's certain family offices that from your group, you want to follow what they do? Maybe they're just aligned to you in terms of risk profile, but that they're the guys who are in the best deals.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a couple that I will go to for, particularly if it's a particular asset class or sector. So, if it's fintech, I know exactly who to ask. If it's biotech, I know exactly who to ask. If we're talking about asset classes, there are real estate family offices who just know exactly what they're doing, and VC family offices, and you name it. But yeah, there are people that I think are the absolute champions in my group from an investment perspective.
What does the day-to-day look like for Sam?
No 2 days are the same in the family office world. Not necessarily talking about my own experiences, but often if you work for a family office principal, you have to model some sort of deal. You have to go to a conference to meet a particular fund manager, and then you have to pick up that person's kids from school because the nanny was ill. And, it could be any number of things depending on the family and the family structure. What does the day look like for Sam? I'm spending a lot of my time now comparing notes with other family offices on interesting deals that I could potentially deploy into. That's what my life currently looks like. Will it look like that next week? Probably. Week after that? Don't know. Let's see. So it's not like a typical 9-to-5 experience where you know exactly what you're going to get. You have to do what the principal wants you to do, and that could vary wildly depending on that individual.
Best and worst thing about your job and or life, because obviously you've lived many different lives. What do you perhaps miss from all your travels?
I think the best thing about being Sam is that I have access to some of the most incredible people, at least in London and beyond. And I feel really honoured that they're not only my community, but I can call many of them very good friends. So that I wouldn't trade for anything. It warms my heart. So that's fantastic. What do I miss about my previous life? I was a bit of an adrenaline junkie in my 20s and had some truly mad experiences that I probably won't go into too much detail on camera, but we can talk about over a beer later. And
That's when you know they're good.
yeah, there's some good ones in there. And as I've got older, my risk appetite has declined, and I think that's a good thing. And that's not a problem. But I do reminisce with fondness over some of those experiences, particularly in Asia Pacific.
So if I was to put diving with sharks, like
Well,
like this is the risk appetite, where are you in the spectrum from?
I mean, just living with cannibals for most of 2013 would be pretty high on that list, I would say, and the many things that entailed. Yeah.
What did you eat?
Yeah, I so wanted to ask that.
What did you eat? What did you eat?
I mostly ate sweet potato. Mostly sweet potato.
And
for-
were they
That
like,
word mostly is doing
he's-
so much.
he's well
Yeah.
fed, this guy. We need
Yeah,
to
it was,
we need to try.
I struggle
Sleep
to
with
eat
one
sweet
eye
potato
open.
these days because it's basically what I ate. I did have a bit of meat as well along the way.
If you're 20, 19, and you don't need to go the non-traditional route because you're dead set and you just want to play it safe, maximize the chances, how would you break into what you're doing?
I'd be very suspicious of a 20-year-old who was desperate to work for a family office because it's a quite weird career path, and it's often very dependent on your relationship with that principal. I met my current principal in a very random sort of way, and same with my last principal as well, my last boss at the family office. I think don't do it. Don't position yourself as someone who wants to work for.
He's
a family
selling the
office.
dream.
Yeah. Instead, a classic way that you could work for a family office that would be great is if you get to know someone who's an entrepreneur who's building something that's exciting, who then has a large exit, and you've been there through that journey, and he then has he or she has a large exit, suddenly has a lot of money to play with, and you're there, and you've built it together, you've been there since the beginning. For me, that's the most exciting way of getting into that sort of space. On the other hand, some people just go to a headhunter, any family office is hiring, yes, and they go work for some old school family office. Bit boring, isn't it? I mean, it's much more exciting to be part of the journey.
How can people get involved that are in the family office world? How can they get involved in the group chat and the exciting things that you're building?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who works for a family office or is a principal of a family office is more than welcome to reach out to me. I'm quite easy to find on, let's say, LinkedIn. And, the onboarding process is reach out to me. If I think you're nice and legit, I'll add you to the group. It's as simple as that. There's no complicated forms to fill in. There's no fees. There's nothing hidden. It's as it appears.
Thank you so much. It's been really interesting. Definitely one of the cooler backstories. No offense, Russell. No, it's awesome story. And I want to wrap it up so we can go to the pub and hear about the cannibals.
Sure thing. Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.